one of the main reasons I wanted to talk to you is I heard your new single, Don and the Dreamers, Hurdy Gurdy
Yeah,
Man. It's a great song, but actually there is a connection to a certain member of the group, isn't there?
yeah. Klaus, it was something to do with the Hurdy Gurdy. He had a band called the Hurdy Gurdy Man or something like that, And yeah, that's where the connection is, so something like that.
And how long have Don and the Dreamers been together?
It's been a couple of years now. Basically been recording. Jason, we did one gig in London, it was like a showcase for the album originally, and it was only a short thing, but it was quite good. It was sold out, and no, it went pretty well. It went pretty good.
I know that you're based in Denmark. Are all the members of the group from that fine country?
Yeah, how yeah, he lives in Norway, or he's based in Norway, but he is Danish, but he's based there. But the world's a small place today, Jason. So I mean, we can meet up no problem. I mean, Denmark's only a tiny place, tiny country anyway. So everything worked out pretty good, so we could all meet either in Copenhagen or nearby, or sort of halfway between, sort of thing, for when we've been recording.
Was it Klaus's idea to do a new version of Hurdy Gurdy Man?
I think it was, but it just came from all of us. 'Cause I can't remember who actually mentioned it. And then, as it happened, we all knew the song anyway from the 60s with Donovan. So that's unusual. Let's try that. We just messed around in the studio and it worked really well, Jason. So there we are.
And Don and the Dreamers is known for taking quite a lot of different classic songs of different styles. Will that be the way that things continue? Because I think this is a standalone single, and is that what's to come for a new album?
Well, we probably will start writing original stuff. When we first sort of met and got together, we're all sort of putting forward some of our favourite songs. We all knew basically, and we had great fun in the studio doing them, recording them. So we thought, with the songs that we knew, it's a save a bit of time in the studio, and that's how it went, really, Jason.
The version of the Hurdy Gurdy Man is the one with the George Harrison
I
lyrics.
Yeah, I never knew about that until Klaus actually mentioned it. I never knew about that at all, so that was new to me.
Because
Mm.
on your most recent album, it's Never Too Late to Be a Rock Star. You actually do a George Harrison Beatles tracker for You Blue, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. And that was just one of the songs that was thrown in, thrown in the equation when we started rehearsing together, also getting to know each other. Like I said, that was one of the songs that was just thrown in, and we all basically knew it, and so it's easy to put down on tape, or not. Well, they don't have tape anymore, do they? That's an old saying.
It does look like you guys are just having a lot of fun with the material.
It was like I said, we just went in and we just sort of, it was just sort of one, two, three, there we go. And we were all experienced enough to sort of know what's what. So it worked really easy, and it brought back lots of memories, really, that we all went in together. There's nothing recorded separate. We all went in together and played all together live. And that was great fun.
So Klaus played in a group in the 60s. You certainly started in the 60s. Are all the members from that lineage?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, my wife Hannah, when we were here, when I mentioned all the names, she knew all the bands that were really sort of well known and famous around in Denmark around that time. So we've all done our groundwork, so to speak.
One of the tracks on It's Never Too Late to Be a Rock Star is your new version of Far, Far Away. But
Yeah.
that's quite timely as well because you've also got the 50th anniversary re-release and remastering of Slade in Flame.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, I said last week, I was in London last week, Jason, for the launch of that. And it was great to sort of see Richard Loncraine, who directed Slade in Flame, and Tom Conti, who was one of our managers in the film. So it was really nice to see them again. I mean, I can't believe it's 50 years. It's, I can't believe where the time goes. I mean, it brought back lots of memories when we made the film. A lot of fun that we had doing it, because I mean, we're just like kids in a chocolate factory, just having a great time. And sadly, Alan Lake, who's no longer with us, so we had a great time with him. He had us in fits of laughter all the time, So it was hard to take seriously at one point, because we're having so much fun. And then Richard occasionally say, "Oh, come on," you sort of, slam the hammer down and say, "Let's get to work," sort of thing, But it was great fun doing it. But the only thing is, Jason, I can't watch any film, the same way now, because you know how things are done. You know all the secrets, what go on, and the crew obviously worked on many, many films, were telling us little secrets about all the different things. So, like I said, I can't watch a film the same way anymore.
It will bring back wider memories, and you won't be able to watch that film standalone as it's meant to someone like me who just receiving it as a work of art.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, no, I think I enjoyed watching it last week when we had the premiere of it going on DVD. It brought back lots of memories. It was great fun. Great, we had a great time doing it. It was very hard to take seriously. Like I said, we were just having a great time when we filmed it, Jason. Especially with Alan Lake. We were just laughing all the time.
And that's a contrast to the film itself because as a film, it stands up as a serious and realistic representation of what it was like in the group in that period.
Yeah, well, what it was, we were on this American tour, and Richard and Andrew Birkin, who wrote the script, traveled with us on that tour, just to get to know stories and different things. I mean, all the scenes, all the stories in the film are true to different bands from way back. Sort of thing about being ripped off, the mafia type management and all that kind of thing. And that's what we wanted to do. Like I said, we didn't want to do like a run around, jump around film. We wanted to sort of show the real things that go on in the music business. The only trouble is, Jason, it did actually go against us, because it was hard for people to associate the film, because we weren't Slade in the film. We were playing different characters, and it was hard for the general public, or the kids that were following us at that time, to sort of separate it. They thought it was like Slade in the film, where we argue and break up at the end and that kind of thing. And it sort of did go against us in a way, but I'm glad. I'm glad that we did what we did, and not do like a run around, jump around film.
And the music at that time as well, which is in the soundtrack of the film, is some of the best material that you did, whether it's How Does It Feel or Far, Far Away.
Far, Far Away is still my favourite Slade song, or Noddy Holder and Jim Lee song. I think at that time we were touring non-stop, touring the world non-stop, and that sort of the lyrics in that song sort of showcase all the travelling we were doing.
And in that period as well, you didn't always get the success that you should have done. I know that How Does It Feel was top 20, but it wasn't kind of in that top three that we. And it seems like whether it's the film or the material of that time, the passing of time has been very, very kind to Slade.
Yeah, it's been. I mean, funny enough, I mean, it wasn't one of our most successful singles at the time, but in America it was. It was on the radio all the time. And the only thing is, when they showcased the film Slade in Flame in St. Louis, no one could understand what we were saying, the dialect, and the story wasn't a common story to the American public, really. But How Does It Feel he got lots and lots of radio play in the States.
You've got an excellent autobiography as well, which covers the full gamut of your
Yeah,
life, and it describes you being in the Boy Scouts and taking up the
yeah.
drums.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was it was my wife Hannah's idea because I've got all my diaries from all those years, Jason, and we were just reading them together, and she was killing herself laughing, and she said you should put this into a book. And the only person I could think of was Lisa, a Danish writer who I've done quite a few interviews with, and I really trust her. And it got to the point where I just gave her all my diaries, and yeah, I mean that's where I started playing drums in the Boy Scouts. I mean. And my first pair of drumsticks were I made from the stem of an artificial Christmas tree, but not knowing about wood, sort of thing. I mean, it took me months with a penknife, sort of shaving them or what have you, varnishing them at the end, because the first time you use them, they broke. And I was not knowing about wood, of course, in those days. I was so disappointed, as you can imagine, But it was a great time making them, and a great time first. Sort of playing with just two guys at the time, and we were just playing youth clubs and weddings and sort of birthday parties and things like that. But it was a great sort of grounding for us, if you like.
Absolutely. And there's things in that autobiography that I didn't know was that even in the very early days of the Vendors, you supported the Hollies. So late 1963?
Years about that. We were supporting how that came about, Jason, is like we were members of this youth club, and John Squire, who was the youth club leader, used to let us use the youth club to rehearse. And in turn, it was called the dance in those days. We'd have the dance at the local baths hall where they put the floor down, and he would sort of booked like we played with the Hollies, and they were carrying their own gear, and then Graham Nash was still in the lineup, and we played with Cream. They just formed as well. And in those days, it wasn't separate dressing rooms either.
Right.
The dressing room there was just a store cupboard at the side of the stage, and everybody was in the store cupboard. And I remember when we played with Cream, and also our old mate Robert Plant was on that show as well. So I mean, it just brings back. I often, when I do see Robert Plant, we always have a little joke about that because I remember we got £6 and Robert Plant got four. So we always have a little joke about it when we see each other.
Of all the music scenes around in the mid 60s, whether a few years earlier you've got the Liverpool, Mersey, Manchester, London, but actually the Black Country music scene was just as good. The amount of bands and musicians is incredible.
That's fantastic, like you say, Jason. When you think there was the Moody Blues, Zeppelin, all in different bands at the time. It was a very healthy music scene, and there was so many gigs to play in those days, be it pubs or sort of village halls. But it was all a great time, and we always used to meet after the gigs. We used to have this caravan outside the railway station in Birmingham where you could get like hot dogs and teas and coffees, and a lot of the bands would meet there after the gigs and just have a laugh and a chat like that. But all that scene's gone now, Jason.
Yeah. What was it like getting together with so the early members of the In-Betweens? You did a version of Train Kept Her Rolling a few years back. That must have been a fantastic thing to do.
That was great. Seeing with Johnny Howells, who was vocalist with the In-Between, the original In-Betweens, and Mickey Marson on the guitar. That was great. I've seen Mick a few times when I've been back to Wolverhampton, but it was great. It brought back lots of memories when we were in the studio together, because I remember Johnny learning harmonica at the time, because around that we were playing quite a bit of blues stuff then, and so it was really nice for the original sort of guys to be back together and playing. That was a lot of nostalgia there. It was really great fun.
And as Jim and then Noddy joined the In-Betweens, things seemed to move into a bit more of a soul direction, do you think?
Yeah, well, we sort of we did a lot of harmony stuff, like Tamla Motown stuff. We were playing around that time, Jason, and that involved like harmonies and things. And we used to work really hard on the harmonies, like with Jim, Dave, and Nod. And it was a great time. That was actually because we used to go to this record shop in Birmingham called the Discovery, and the guy there used to let us play, usual thing, standing in the booth listening to records. And we used to listen to a lot of Tamla Motown stuff we were doing then. And it was a great time, that was, great time.
And even with the In-Betweens, you did release some singles, including at least one single on Columbia Records, an amazing label. That must have been very exciting to have your own single on a major label.
Yeah, I mean, how that came about, we played this club in London called Tiles. It's long since gone. And a guy called Kim Fowley was there, the American guy, nutcase, who'd
Yeah.
done like They're Coming to Take Me Away as Napoleon the 14th, whatever it was. And before that, he'd done many years before, done the Hollywood Argyles and all things like that. And he wanted to produce us. And we weren't writing our own stuff then, and he took us into this tiny studio in London, and we recorded "You Better Run" by the Young Rascals. That was one of our stage shows, the stage songs, and that's how we came out on. All of a sudden, like you said, we were on Columbia Record. I mean, that was amazing. EMI, I mean, I think that was the only song that was ever released. There might have been a few more, but that was all down to Kim Fowler, that was.
So what led you to be renamed Ambrose Slade?
When we did a recording audition of Fontana Records, and the head of the company, a guy named Jack Baverstock, he hated the name that we had, the In-Betweens. He hated that, so he said he wanted us to change it. And we thought, well, here's a chance for us to get a recording contract, and so we just put like we had a sort of a small fan club in our hometown of Wolverhampton at the time, and we got them to sort of mail out and put it about us wanting to change our name, and somebody came up with Ambrose and somebody else came up with Slade, and we just put them together, and that's how that came about, really.
And was the material for the debut album, was it Beginnings? Was that your stage set?
That's what it was. I mean, like I said, the head of the company, Fontana Records, Jack Baverstock, like I said, he really liked us, and we were just we weren't writing songs then, and it was basically like you said, it was our stage show, and there was a couple of things that was rewrote. We just basically knocked up in the studio, sort of a few sort of instrumental things or things like that. But it was basically our stage show from the time, that, Jason.
And then Chas Chandler, his role for you and Slade was absolutely pivotal, really, wasn't it?
But incredible. Like I said, when we were doing the recording of Fontana Records, the head of the company, Jack Baverstock, he said, because we were being managed in Wolverhampton by a policeman and his wife. And he said, well, you're not going to do a lot with people like that looking after you. You need someone in the business to look after you. And we said, well, we don't know anybody, so well, let me put the feelers out. And then a few days later, Chas Chandler turned up in the studio, and we're all, wow, this is the guy who was, the bass player with the Animals, and the guy that discovered Jimi Hendrix. And then he wanted to take us on, and we thought it was incredible that. And for many years, Chap produced all our records.
Amazing figure, Chas. And was he an ideas man in the sense that he had various sort of things that he'd present to you as like, this is the way that you will help you, like, adopting the skinhead look, for example.
Well, that came from Chaz. I mean, like we sort of, I suppose, in a way, the way he looked at us, we looked like just like everybody else. And the skinhead thing was coming into fashion at the time, and he put that toward, to us, forward to us, and we weren't quite sure, but we thought, well, we got something like Chas Chandler looking after us. Let's go along with it. I mean, we didn't particularly place. It was purely an image thing, Jason. We weren't particularly playing skinhead music like the reggae or that kind of thing as it was at the time. But it did get us noticed. It did get us noticed, but not always for the best,
Yeah.
but it did get us noticed, and yeah, yeah, and then of course you go from there to from the sublime to the ridiculous with all the outrageous stage clothes.
Mm. Now, for the second album, Play It Loud, that's significant for me in that you seem to be writing quite a few lyrics at the time.
Yeah, well, what it was then, Jim Lee and myself, I think we basically wrote most of that album. I was just writing the lyrics. I mean, I'm actually tone deaf, Jason. I can't sing and I can't play an instrument, so it took me a long time to get my ideas across to Jim, sort of thing. But it was great fun. That was the first time, like with Chas Chandler was our record producer also, that we went into a real studio, and that it was a lot of learning that we had making that album. Sort of. Well, funny enough, one of the guys who engineered the album, Alan O'Duffy, I attended his funeral last week, sadly. It was, and the first time also that we were in a proper studio, Olympic studio in Barnes, and it was another learning process for us. That was, but then we found out it was better for Jim and Not to write the songs, and they could come up with Not could come up with great lyrics and Jim with melodies and things. And one of the first songs was "Cause I Love You," and that was our first number one.
It was, but the first song that really broke through, not as high, but it really did get into the charts, was "Get Down and Get With It." So that
Yeah.
was that a cover version at Chaz's?
No, no. What we did, but that was that was the part of our stage show.
Oh,
That was the last song of our stage show because nothing could follow it. Because we used to involve the crowd with that particular song, and when Chaz saw us first, he said, "That's got to be a single." And that was our first chart entry really because it was a bit too rowdy for radio at the time, I remember rightly, and the reason it sold was was basically from our live shows because we were touring non-stop in those years, Jason, and that was the last song of our set, and that's really how that charted was because of the following we had. And then the doors were open for us, and that's when Chas said, "Then now start writing your own material." And like the next one was, as you mentioned, was "Cause I Love You."
you'll have to correct me on the terminology, but for me, that's got a bit of a march sort of feel in terms of the drums, which is almost going back to when you were in the Boy Scouts.
It was just like a syncopation thing on the snare drum, and because like Noddy Holder especially was a big fan of Stefan Grappelli and Django Reinhardt, and that's how it started really. And would you believe? I mean, when we recorded it, we had a great time doing it, Jason. But Chas said, "That's your first number one." And we just laughed. We just laughed at him. And at first, we didn't want to put it out. We thought it was a bit too soppy. And that's when we put the hand clapping and the boot stamping on it. And that became a trademark for many of the singles after that. But it was our first number one.
But you also had a hand in writing "Look What You Done."
Yeah, that's right. There were my lyrics on there. I don't know how that came about. I didn't sort of. I love that kind of feel that we do with "Look What You Done," and like I said, I mainly did the lyrics, but Noddy Holder helped out on that as well. So that was good.
And the music scene at the time became known as glam music, but other than maybe some of the outfits, I didn't see you as a group as a glam band.
Well, I suppose it was just the colourful things. I suppose you can blame that on Dave Hill. If I told you he was colourblind, I think that would make a lot of sense, I think, to a lot of people, you know. So, but it is funny because I don't know whether you know the story when we used to get to gigs, he would never change in front of us. And we'd always wait to see what he came out with, you know what I mean? But like I said, he's colourblind, so I think that explains a lot.
And the dynamics between all four of you seem to make a perfect package as a group. You all brought different things to the band that made something special.
Yeah, I mean, but it wasn't really planned that, Jason. When we started rehearsing together, that's the way things were developed. We all realised we had an individual sort of input to the situation, and that's how we carried on doing. And it was Chas actually, Chas Chandler, who noticed that, and he said you must never lose that, and that's how we carried on for many years.
Whose idea was it to record Slade alive?
Chassis, because we'd already released a couple of singles and nothing much happened. We released Play It Loud, which was the album which Jim Lee and myself mainly wrote, and we were going down really good at live concerts, Jason, and that's when Chas said, "Let's do a live album." And what he did, he booked us. I don't think it's there anymore. It's a theatre come studio called Command in London, in Piccadilly, where there's a small theatre that held about 150, 200 people, but it was set up as a recording studio. So what we did, we recorded 3 nights there. We just put an invite out to the fan club people and just in general who wanted to come along. We recorded 3 nights with the idea of picking the best out of each night for the album. And the actual Slade Live album is actually the second night. It's all of the second night. But, it's no matter where we go, all over the world, and no matter what albums we've released, people always mention Slade Alive. No matter where we go. I mean, when we first toured of Australia, it had gone gold 6 times in
Wow.
Australia. It was just a massive, we just couldn't go anywhere. It was just on the radio. And I remember that tour, that first tour in Aussie, we were on, us and Status Quo were doing the tour. Of course, it was on radio non-stop. Of course, they were there on the tour bus. They would go, "Oh no, not you lot again!" But it was just, no, like I said, no matter where we go in the world, people always mention Slade Alive. It's just incredible.
1972 and
Yeah,
1973,
yeah,
you were releasing number one songs and anthem after anthem, whether it's
yeah.
Come On Feel the Noise, Mama
Ye-
We're All Crazy Now, songs that will just echo through the ages. Did you realize that that it almost couldn't get better from a musical perspective?
But I think what it was at the time, because we're having such a great time touring, and it was going so well for us, and that's how Noddy Holder and Jim Lee were writing the songs to sort of to suit our stage show at the time, and that's how that came about, Jason. I mean. Mama All Crazy, we used to play that on stage for quite a while before we actually recorded it, and it was great to play on stage, and it went down fantastic as well, even before it was known, and that was the sort of direction that mainly that Noddy and Jim were writing.
As you were at the peak, the most awful of circumstances, you've been in a car accident, your girlfriend was killed. It was
Yeah.
such a contrast between being number one constantly and then being critically injured.
Oh, it was a weird time that, sort of. Fun enough, we were number one. We squeezed me, please me at the time, and even now today, I've got no idea about the accident, Jason. I haven't got a clue about it, what happened. And when we went on an American tour just after that, it was my first tour back, which was also very difficult for me, because of the injuries that I had. And our agent in America, he had a friend who was a brain specialist, and I went to see him. And I was sort of saying that I've got no idea what happened at the accident. And he said, "You never will." He said the brain is the most complex computer. He said it just switched off before the accident and switched back on when he felt ready. He said you never will remember what happened. So there we go. But it's well, when I was still living in my hometown, Wolverhampton, I used to drive by every day where it happened, and it meant nothing to me. It means nothing at all to me. Apparently, it was the entrance to a school, with the gate to a school. I had this fantastic get well card from all the pupils of the school. They all sort of signed it, and at the bottom, someone said, "Next time, make it the school." So, but people were sort of very supportive of me. It was very hard to go back on tour so soon, but it was the best thing I did. The actual doctor who was looking after me, it was his idea to get back on tour. He said, "Get back on tour straight away, otherwise you never will." And it was the last thing on my mind, Jason. I just felt I was still smashed up, but it was the best thing I did. It was very hard, but it was the best thing I did.
I don't know how you did it, but clearly
It
you
was
did.
very hard, but it was fantastic therapy, if you like.
And was it that period post crash where you recorded "Merry Christmas Everybody" in the
Yeah, yeah,
States?
that's it. We were on the world tour at the time, and we were from the States. We were going on to Australia and Japan, and we had a week off in New York before we went on to Australia. And Chaz just said to Nod and Jim, "Have you got anything? We've got a week off. If you got something, we can go in the studio." And they said, "Well, we've got this Christmas song." This was like June or July, sort of 73. Let's get in the studio and record it quick. Of course, that was another one that was very hard to sort of get our heads around. There's this heat wave of 100 degrees outside, and there we were singing Merry Christmas, sort of thing. And would you believe, Jason, when it was all finished, we were unsure about it. We were unsure about
Really?
releasing it. And I remember Chas saying to us, "I don't care what you lot say, this is coming out." And but if you listen, I was still having the bit of the amnesia problems. And if you listen to very hard to the very end, you'll hear one drum beat where I forgot to stop. And it's still there. You've got to listen very hard.
But it's those imperfections that actually make it more interesting on the ear and
I
actually.
I think so because I save I actually the record collection I save a lot of 78 records, Jason, and listen to some of the early Elvis stuff. If people really knew how loose those early recordings are. But that's what makes a record. I mean, the feeling and the excitement in some of those early records are fantastic, really.
And a bit of a contrast in that as you move into the mid 1970s, you were still producing some of your best music, like the album Nobody's Fools. And songs like Scratch My Back are a great rocker, but they
Yeah.
weren't getting the success because I guess the musical scene had moved on. So must have
Yeah.
been a strange time.
Actually, that's one of my favorite albums, Slade albums. We did that in New York, and it did have the record plant in New York where John Lennon always recorded, and yeah, that's where we did that. It was a new era for us. Actually, that's one of my favorite albums the Slade made, and it was just a whole new sort of. Direction for us, if you like, and the way we recorded in the record plant in New York. And but like you say, it wasn't one of our most successful albums either. I think it was maybe at that time it is what the kids who were following us and buying our records. It was something that they weren't expecting. I think it didn't go down too well. I think people wanted something like the mob were all crazy now, so come on, feel the noise. But it's actually one of my favorite albums. And would you believe? I must tell you this story. When Chaz was in New York in the record plant mixing, it was the same. It's the same studio that John Lennon always recorded at. And because like with Chas with the Animals and the bit they were all around the same time in the 60s. So so John Lennon apparently went in the studio control room to say hi to Chas. He hadn't seen him since the 60s basically. And one of our tracks was playing, and John Lennon was listening, and he actually said to Chas, "I like that singer. He sounds like me." I thought it's a great compliment for Noddy Holder that. But like you say, Jason, it didn't do too well for it. It did go top 20, but not like the previous albums. I think uh, wasn't really what our followers were expecting.
And success in the States, that seemed quite mixed. I think Chas was,
Oh,
making your tour over there, and it
yeah.
only seemed like by the 1980s, where you did have some success, that cover versions of your songs
Yeah,
would get into the charts. It proves that Slade should have been massive in the States, but so
a lot of people say that, Jason. But when we were touring there non-stop in the 70s, but the glam thing wasn't in the States at the time, and we were on some strange bills, some strange. The very first tour was with Humble Pie with Steve Marriott, and that was a great tour. But after that, we were on some strange bills. I mean, would you believe we supported Sly and the Family Stone at one
really.
show? Yeah, I mean, talk about chalk and cheese, you know what I mean, sort of thing. But then, sort of like you say, then sort of Quiet Riot record "Come On Feel the Noise," and they take it to number one in the States. And when we released it in '73 over there, it never even saw the light of day. And it wasn't until in the '80s when MTV had started and Sharon Osbourne took us over, looked after us in America, that, like I said, MTV had started. And that's when Run Runaway charted in the States. And it's strange enough because I don't know if you've seen the video for that. It's in front of this big castle in Worcester. And because it was like sort of typical Americans, they thought that's where we lived. They thought that was our house.
Late 1970s, quite a tough time for the group, but there's that incredible moment, August 1980, and Ozzy Osbourne dropping out of the Reading Festival.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean well, I mean the way that happened, Jason. I mean, I remember I was at home and Noddy Holder called me, and we were killing ourselves laughing because he said we'd been offered this on this slot on the Reading Festival, and we were killing ourselves laughing. So anyway, let's go for it. We just had a few days rehearsal, in our little village hall back in Wolverhampton, and we just got the hire car and got to Reading. And we hadn't got proper passes, so we were walking through with all the punters going into the festival, and they were all saying, "What are you lot doing here?" So, "Oh, we're playing here tonight," sort of thing. And everything went. It couldn't have got any better, Jason. I mean, it just went on. I think what it was. I mean, Nod is such an incredible front man, and he got the whole crowd with us right from the start. And we couldn't do any wrong. It was just amazing. It was just incredible for us, Jason. And that's what brought us back in, really, because it was recorded for radio, the whole show. And then we released an EP, as they used to be called, and that charted. And that's what brought us back again, really.
1990s a mixed time in that Noddy and Jim left and you guys carried on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've got groups like Oasis
Yeah. I
taking the
know.
Slade sound
Yeah.
worldwide.
It's incredible because it's just amazing. I mean, sort of, it happened quite a lot in the States. It's sort of like Quiet Riot did "Come On Feel the Noise" and took it to number one, like I said. And the people always accuse us of playing a Quiet Riot song, and which is quite funny. But yeah, it's a really lovely compliment, I think, especially to Nod and Jim when sort of people do cover their songs, like I said with Oasis, we "Come On Feel the Noise." And quite a few other people did like "Mama All Crazy Now" and things like that. So it's a compliment in a way, Jason.
Getting back more up to date with the Don Powell band as well. You've got
Yeah,
some members in that group that played with the later incarnations of Slade.
That's right. That's right. Craig Finney on bass and guitar, and Steve Worley, who was the vocalist with Slade 2 at the time. He's there as well. So no, that was great fun in the studios because I just brought back lots of memories when we first went back on the road with Craig and Steve. So there's some more to come of that actually. Some more material to come out from that lineup, Jason.
Jim played on My Sharona.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we just sort of said, I don't know where it was. We were somewhere, and said, "You fancy coming along?" He wasn't sure at the time. Well, come along and have a listen if you want to. And he's part of the video as well. So it's one of those songs that actually from some of our American tours when that was on the radio non-stop by the Knack. So it's on, and it was a great song to record and Jim came along and just guested on guitar.
Relatively recently, with the Don Powell band as well, you released Na Na Na, which is Cozy Powell. Was Cozy someone that people mixed you up with?
All the time. I mean, so all the time. And I remember one time in the recording studio in Birmingham, Cozy was there, and I walked in, and we looked at each other, and I said to him, "I said, which one are you?" I said, Pippi. Yeah, it was just one of those things. I mean, all the time, sort of getting mixed up for each other. And sadly, again, he's no longer with us. But there you go.
There's a hell of a lot on. Don and the Dreamers, probably a new album. You've still got the Don Powell band. You've had the recent re-release of Slade in Flame. It's as busy as ever for you, Don.
It's wonderful. And I'm so enjoying it, Jason. It's wonderful, sort of thing. It's sort of, I mean, I would never have ever thought this far on, Jason, but just incredible. I mean, I just have to remember sometimes which hat to put on, it's just where I am, sort of thing. But it's great fun. I'm having a great time, Jason.
Thank you, Don. What a pleasure it is to talk to you. And
Thanks for taking time out, Jason. Really enjoyed it, mate. Let's keep in touch, Keep in contact. And if there's anything new comes out, you'll be first to know.
brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to spread the word. Take care.
Thanks a lot, Jason.